If you cannot close that deal, like, you shouldn't be a founder. So go out and close some sales, get some users, and then iterate on the product until you can get somewhere interesting.
The only way to get great talent is to get great talent who want the high risk, high reward of being at a startup. And that is not just true for AI. This has been true for software engineers for a really long time. Your application is going to work a lot better for your customers. You're going to compete a lot better in the market if you are able to build super tailored proprietary data sets that give you some advantage when you apply those models to your scenario.
This is like, if you're a technical founder and you're in a pre-seed or seed startup, like, no tech talent's going to come bail you out. You're going to probably have to build all of this yourself, and these people can help you, and potentially they can grow. But you own it, right?
Thank you all for being here and coming out on this beautiful day. I'm Malin Yen, and I'm the founder and partner at Operator Collective, which is an early stage venture fund. We invest primarily in seed and A, and occasionally a pre-seed and an opportunistic later stage. We're fortunate to be investors in Textio as well as Supio, and we are frequent co-investors with Bonfire. So thrilled to be co-hosting with them with this tonight. And then Nate from Ascend, raise your hand. Yay, thank you so much for doing this with us and bring in all these amazing founders. And so we're gonna get started in a sec, but because we want to meet all of you, let's, so we've got Brett, raise your hand, from Bonfire, woohoo, and Tyler from Bonfire. That's the only two from Bonfire today, right?
Yes, thank you everyone for coming out. Should be a good night.
Great. And then if you're from Operator Collective, please raise your hands so that people can find you afterwards. We want to talk to all of you and excited to hear about your companies. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So let's start with Kieran. Tell us a little bit about Textio, what stage it is, when you started it, and maybe a little bit of the funding history too, and what you're doing.
Sure. How many of you have heard of Textio before? Okay, so it's a Seattle crowd, right? So Textio, amazingly enough, invented a bunch of generative AI for writing. You probably know Textio as a company that helps people hire and recruit diverse and qualified teams. But the very first thing we were actually trying to build when we started was a word processor. And our theory was we were going to start out in recruiting, and that was going to be a wedge into the enterprise where anything you were writing, we had technology to help you get a response from the audience you wanted. Fun fact, we actually started an HR tech company. We didn't know we were doing that, but the product took root deep and quickly and in the enterprise, and we grew really fast and now build a set of software that helps people across HR communication network. So I was the founding CEO. I am now the Chief Scientist Emeritus and founder in residence at Operator Collective. So I stepped down from the CEO role right at the turn of the year. Still literally married to the company. My husband is the CEO. He was my co-founder. But in terms of funding history, we raised our first round. We were 7 weeks old. We raised a seed round. That was a time when there wasn't really pre-seed, so you went straight into a seed round. And we raised our A round about a little bit later, then we raised a B round, then we raised another round after that. We've raised about 42 million total, about a $30 million ARR company, and that's where we are. So excited to be here. I write lots and lots of data stories about workplace and startups at nerdprocessor.com, where I maintain a newsletter where I give lots and lots of data. So if you're interested, you can subscribe.
Microphone.
My turn?
Yeah.
Well, I'm Jerry Zhou. I'm CEO of Supio. And Supio is a legal AI company that helps law firms understand their data by structuring it. In terms of where we started we've always wanted to, my co-founder and I, we've been best friends since 4th grade. We've always wanted to build a startup together. So when COVID started, we left Microsoft and we started exploring what it meant to go build a company. And it's been quite a journey. A lot of it was just learning about how to raise money, to being able to understand a corporation, to selling to our first customers. We raised a pre-seed round. Peter over there led our pre-seed. And then Tyler and Brett led our seed round. And then Sapphire Ventures led our A. So we've raised about $33 million to date. It's one of the things that we mainly focus on is really applying some of this like big tech industry data knowledge to really specific segments of the market where we can go and perform at higher efficiency, deliver better experiences for like very, very individualized markets like personal injury or mass tort or workers' compensation. And being able to build better experiences and outmaneuvering our competitors there has allowed us to grow really, really quickly coming out of our Series A. Cool.
Tyler, I know I introduced you, but maybe we'll give a few minutes about yourself too.
Yeah, I don't think I need to spend too much time here, but I'm Tyler. I'm a principal at Bonfire Ventures. Been with the firm for about 6 years now. Backgrounds in sales, was at 2 enterprise software businesses that were acquired, got my MBA, interned, and then just wouldn't go away until they hired me. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. We're investing out of Fund 3 right now. We're raising Fund 4. Focus on seed, focus on B2B, low volume, high conviction investors. Focus on being the most trusted and helpful investors to the teams that we back. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And thank you for introducing us to Jerry.
Yeah, happy to.
And which we're thrilled to be investors in. Okay, so let's start off with some questions because we all want to hear about so many of these things. So most attendees today are building AI products or considering doing so. How many people are here thinking about building an AI product? Yeah. What are you going to build, Brett? I'll fund you. How do you build something differentiated and valuable when, first, most people are using the same underlying tech, and second, the space is moving so fast?
Want me to start? Yeah. All right, I will start. So when we started building at Textio, which was almost a decade ago, it was a super different landscape. There were no general purpose AI models that companies could take advantage of. We had to build all of our tech ourselves. Obviously, we used libraries for like really fundamental things like our parsing and our stemming and stuff like that. But there was nothing sort of generative AI that was broadly available. But we had the first generative AI features in our product in 2019. In fact, I was at an event in 2016 with Ilya of OpenAI fame. We were at a small machine intelligence conference at University of Toronto. It had like Jeff Hinton and all these really famous people. And Ilya presented what was going to become OpenAI, and I presented what was becoming Textio. And I left and I said to my husband / co-founder, I'm like, that's never going to work. Haha. But the truth is, when we built, part of why I didn't think it was going to work is they were building something that was totally horizontal. Right? They were building something that worked in a sort of equal opportunity way, no matter what kind of application you were creating. So if you look at ChatGPT as their sort of user app, right, face of that, it works approximately as well if you're writing sales communication or your letter to Santa Claus or your recipe, although maybe don't cook from the recipes. But it's a general purpose model. At Textio, we had a really strong point of view about verticalization. And in B2B, I continue to be a huge believer in verticalization. So you have a big advantage if you are using the same foundation models that everybody else is using, which most of you probably are. Some may not be, but most of you probably are. Your application is going to work a lot better for your customers. You're going to compete a lot better in the market if you are able to build super tailored proprietary data sets that give you some advantage when you apply those models to your scenario. So in the case of recruiting, I said we became an HR tech company. How that happened is we built the best and richest data set about workplace communication and manager communication specifically that anybody in the industry had. And so as we started accelerating, you have more and more enterprise customers, you get more and more data, you become much harder to compete with, right? But if you stay in a purely horizontal place, so a lot of go-to-market tools right now, like there's a million indistinguishable tools for SDRs to use. They all sound exactly like ChatGPT, because they're trying to handle things just at the level of prompt engineering and not at the level of verticalized data sets and workflow integrations. So, yeah.
I feel like I've been through this journey myself. Like when we left Microsoft and we said that we wanted to sell to lawyers, we didn't know anything about lawyers. We kind of knew that like being from a big tech company, you're at this 50,000 foot view where you have absolutely no idea what anyone who uses your product does. You have these numbers about usage, right? But you don't really know what they do when they get out in the morning, like what their meetings are about. So, as we iterated on like our product ideas, talking to customers, we quickly realized that like in order to go establish some type of moat or like be defensible or any of these things, you needed customers. And I think generative AI is interesting because like rather than overthink like how you're going to go build this huge data moat and conquer the world, you need to actually understand which vertical you're trying to attack. And for most of us, I think sitting in this room, just we're probably really technical and don't understand like what people do in whatever vertical SaaS space that we're in. And you can always understand a little bit deeper. So like what really cracked the code for us was like very quickly we realized, hey, like you can show people words streaming on a screen. If you cannot close that deal, like you shouldn't be a founder. So go out and close some sales, get some users, and then iterate on the product until you can get somewhere interesting. And ultimately, the learnings that you have with your customers and prioritizing that is going to help create a much more defensible company. Like we're in such a new space where things are evolving. Like I think Kieran's talking about like 2019 language models. We were playing with like GPT-2 where like the context windows were so small. Today, like we're talking about context windows that span 200 pages and the accuracy is so much higher, right? Like what kind of moat could you possibly build around GPT-2 that would hold today? You can't. You have to understand your customers, connect the dots between evolving technology, and that turmoil is what creates so many advantages kind of day to day that allow you to be able to actually stand up a company.
The other thing I would add, because we're talking about AI native applications here, like a lot of your competitors as a startup are incumbent players who didn't build AI native, so they're trying to like shoehorn features and capabilities in now. And it can seem like they have a lot of advantages because they're incumbents and they have a bunch of customers. But one huge advantage startups have is that you can build for the right data loops from the very, very beginning of your app, which means part of how you create proprietary data is you instrument your app so that as people use the app, they are providing the data that you're using to create the next generation of experiences in your app. And so it becomes, that's what we did with Textio, is everybody who used the application made the application smarter, which is not new, like Google Maps or Waze, they've been doing this for a really long time. But with generative AI capabilities, it is a little bit new. And that is one of the biggest advantages that I think AI native startups have, is you can just get that right from the beginning, not piss off your users. When a lot of the incumbents have really stressed out their users because they changed privacy policy, for instance. You're going to get it right from the beginning. Your users are going to know exactly what they're signing up for.
I think that touches on an important theme just around the advantages that startups have versus incumbents. Can you guys speak a little bit more to your individual processes for doing that customer discovery and understanding the points of leverage where AI could be extremely impactful versus just good old software engineering and building the scaffolding and a traditional product, and like those key areas that you wanted to apply it?
It's an interesting question. When I think about like what that means for AI native companies, if you can understand your customer, it kind of like, if you think about software in general, right? Like you really have two domains. You have like the structured data, like a traditional database, and then you have some CRUD app in the front where there's some buttons and you press some stuff and it stores it. And now in like the 2010s, the 20s, like people layered on like collaboration. That's cool, right? There's lots of these like little tech advantages that previous people had a hard time with, and you can build on top of that. We live in a really different world now, like in a point where you can identify places where humans do things. And a lot of times where humans are doing things are they're actually taking unstructured data and creating structured data from that. So like they're reading a document and they're entering it into a CRM, right? Or they're taking structured data and they're turning it into unstructured data. So now if you want to go build an application in an LLM-based world, you can do a lot more. You can actually go and manufacture that data. You can figure out how to extract it. And today in GPT, you can do a function call in a fraction of a second. You can figure out how to leverage that data to write things for you. You can chat against it, right? So like if you understand the high value human workflows in your industry, you can attack that workflow by building a product for that. And VC-backed companies get more and more sophisticated. Like we use human in the loop a lot. Like there's lots of ways to attack this to create really high value workflows that then, like what Kieran's saying, gather data and ultimately automate and build better infrastructure around this. I think the goal is to be able to find these pain points that are so painful and build delightful customer experiences that are better with them. And ultimately that relies on just being able to create better data and consuming that.
Yeah, I think unless you're building a foundation model company, which most AI companies are not foundation model companies, they're building applications that use foundation models. Unless you're building a foundation model company, it's like you said, how's it different from like plain old software engineering? One thing that has not changed is you don't want to start with the technology and look for a place to apply it. You want to start with actual customer pain points, and now you have a new set of tools you can use to solve those problems, right? You have great foundation models you can bring to bear, but anything that's going to work is going to be deeply rooted in a customer pain point with a workflow around it that doesn't ask your customers to it doesn't ask them to work in a way that is not natural to the problems that they're trying to solve. Like one of the things that's wild right now in big companies is like the dynamic is often CEO is like, especially old industries, CEO is often like, okay, we got to get with AI. Okay, exec team, like go figure it out. We got to up level with AI. And so they have a bunch of executives who may not be technical, most of them aren't, and they're like, okay, well the CEO said I have to like use AI. Okay, like now what? And of course, by the way, they have AI review boards who may not be that sophisticated technically because it's new skills for them too. And so they go out, they look at a bunch of vendors. Very few vendors make it through that process because those processes aren't starting with an executive who's like, here's the problem I'm trying to solve. If you can, however, speak to that CFO about saving money, or speak to that marketing leader about changing their conversion rate, or speak to that sales leader about greater lead gen, like you're going to speak to a metric they already care about. And then AI is just the means. It's not the point. So I think that hasn't really changed.
Another somewhat related question, I guess, can you speak a little bit to, especially when there's these top-down directives around, we got to do AI now, right? We have to figure out a way to implement this technology. One of our observations has been, it's very interesting to see the point, the transition from AI eating into the software budget versus a transition to eating into the labor budget and headcount. And just curious, like, the journey each of you, if you could speak to the journey each of you have gone through in terms of mapping the value to headcount, because very clearly, I think across both of your technologies, right, it's like, well, this is a better solution versus the budget for that particular solution, maybe a competitor. But there's also increasingly a clear line you can draw to like, this replaces like 1 or 5 or 10 people.
Yeah.
And so maybe even just like the messaging of around like, how do you not terrify people like of being replaced and like manage that sales cycle?
I am so glad you asked that question. So I did 2 data stories this year. Maybe I wrote the first one in about June. I had seen about 100, 150 AI pitches already this year. And a shockingly high percent of them, when they're pitching VCs, are just explicitly pitching job replacement. Like explicitly, in a way they might not if they were pitching customers. They might talk about greater efficiency or free your team up to, or maybe get 24-hour coverage on something, like they talk about efficiency in other ways, but like straight up pitching job replacement. At the same time, I did a bunch of interviews a month or two back with a bunch of these non-technical buyers about what they're doing when the CEO is like, let's get AI. And almost all of them are also like, look, the subtext when we don't know what problem we're solving is we're solving cutting costs. And so I think it's on a lot of executives' minds. If an executive isn't the buyer of your product, you have a dissonance there because it may not be something that a lot of individuals or line managers are excited to hear about. And so that can be tricky to manage. And I'm seeing a lot of startups have different altitudes of messaging depending on who they're pitching. But you're doing this like right now, so I'm curious what you're seeing.
I'm not a big fan of pitching job replacement. I find it to be a little uncreative. Like as an engineer and being a huge nerd, like it's a problem set that's really well defined. It's like, let me go automate this, right? I used to like talk about automating stuff all the time. I stopped now. One of the codes I think we cracked in terms of providing a product for our customers is that it's not about job replacement. It's about doing the job better or in a more interesting way. AI is like that, right? It delights the user. Like when we think about finding information for a lawyer to be a better lawyer, like maybe a paralegal could have prepped some memo or a document for them, but now you have an interactive tool that they're gonna wanna use more than use the paralegal. So is it job replacement or is it just a better way to do something, right? That's something that we focus a lot on. And like, ultimately, our buyers will buy for whatever reasons, but you don't need to go around spelling that out for them. So I think creating a delightful user experience is probably core to being having this type of adoption. The other thing I'll add about job replacement that I've seen is it makes the sales cycle extremely hard. If you go into a deal and you say, I'm going to replace this person's or this team's job, like I've seen that before where like we'll have a purchaser be the manager evaluating the quality of this versus their own staff. Oh man, that bar is so high, right? Every mistake gets amplified. So it's not a great way, in my opinion, to achieve like that exponential growth that we're all seeking for. And we can all be a little bit more creative about that.
And this problem, the agency issue, is not new. Even before AI, which has a more straight line, which is like, oh, AI is going to come after your job, is that even back when Brett and I were doing software, right? It's like, oh, well, is this going to replace my job? Literally, when in my startup, people would say, well, that's my job. Like, what am I going to do if we bring you in? And it's like, no, actually, all the crappy part of your job that you don't want to do, like, we're going to do that part of it. And also, we're going to give you access to data that you don't have across multiple organizations. And so you can do your job better and it'll be more interesting. But it's compounded with AI because I think it's so front and center to people, but it's an issue that people who've been selling software have faced for many years. It sounds like, do you have a comment on that? Because I have another question. Okay. So one question I have is like, so Jerry mostly sells to SMB, and you were, how much is enterprise versus commercial versus?
Like 90% is enterprise.
Like 90% is enterprise. So let's talk a little bit about like pricing, and especially pricing in an AI native world. Maybe how yours has evolved, how you have come across pricing. And pricing is something that's tough. I don't think anyone gets it right the first time. And you're always kind of looking at it saying, do we kind of, do we need to tweak it? I don't know who wants to start.
Yeah, I can start with the journey. It was a journey at Textio. Pre anyone talking about AI, we built a product that was used by recruiters and bought by executives in talent acquisition. And we originally had that product available on our website on a self-serve basis where you could go plunk down your credit card and you could buy a seat of Textio or an account for yourself. We had a big problem because people shared accounts. It was undermining our enterprise sales. We grappled with it for like 6 months, and then we landed on, we could flat rate price this based on some other unit of value, like the number of jobs you have open at the time you subscribe. And all of a sudden, you can see in the 6 weeks we made that decision, our revenue graph went like this to like this. And our customers didn't push back. And it was a huge eye-opening moment to me about what a pricing model does for your revenue growth, because the core value of the user experience did not change, during that time. So enter everybody building with AI now. AI is getting cheaper to build with, but isn't cheap. Especially for startups. This is a place where incumbents have like a war chest of money that gives them some compute advantage, but it's getting more accessible because a lot of the platforms with compute want your business as startups. But something that's totally not decided in enterprise sales right now is whether people charge more for AI or it becomes part of your baseline offering that is a differentiator. So you see like really big platforms, sometimes, especially those with like deep bank accounts, choosing to bundle AI features in because they can afford to run losses on deployment of those features. It's pretty anti-competitive with startups, right? But they can afford to do that. On the other hand, the smaller the company is, the less likely it is they can sustain that. And even for big companies with enough scale, that gets really expensive. And so you see across enterprise right now, people trying to figure out, is this a piece that I explicitly monetize? And remember, these are incumbents who didn't have AI before. Unlike you all who are building AI native, they have like the old version and like now with AI. So they're trying to think about how to transactionalize that. At Textio, we decided to bake it all in. We are not a rich incumbent. We decided to bake it all in and be really strategic about when the features get called into action in reality in the background. What you see in the user experience and what happens on the back end don't have to be the exact same thing. So we've decided baking it all in is the way to compete because we think the big players that we really compete with for enterprise business are increasingly going to go in that direction. Well, I'm curious what it's like in SMB though.
I think a pricing model has to evolve with the founder and the company. I remember when Peter invested in us back then, super risky investment, Peter. And we were telling lawyers, like, we just charge you $75 a seat. I didn't even know what that meant. It was just like, we just tell them to just do this and then pay us using credit card. The first time we sent over a credit card through email using Stripe, I was scared shitless. I was like, are they actually going to input this credit card for us? And they did, and it gave me a little bit of confidence. And then we told C-Change that we had like 30K in ARR through like a couple law firms. And that was how we raised our first round. And it wasn't about the pricing. It was more about a founder learning how to sell, from engineer to product manager to learning to collect your first check, right? And I think that's what my initial pricing model was solving, the pain point of validation. It's like, can this founder sell? In fact, we were recently talking about investment that you guys just made about like founders being able to sell. And then we went from there to like really tapping into the market we had without really figuring out a pricing model. And then we were like, you know what would be cool? 5K a month. Like, just do 5K a month with us. Here's a contract, just sign it. So then they signed that, and we didn't really understand like what was going on in terms of like the unit economics or anything like that. So then we raised the bonfire round based on selling a bunch of people this 5K a month thing. Because I got better at selling, but we still couldn't crack the problem of like, we just needed the revenue. Because for a seed round, this is the criteria, right? So then after we got the seed round, now we started really trying to understand how to get to a Series A. And that's where you're solving for a very different problem. Now I'm trying to solve for this, like, we need to maximize revenue based on this product that we're trying to build. How do you create some alignment with the actual, the businesses that we're trying to sell to? And quickly you realize, like, hey, this per seat model or this 5K a month thing doesn't really work. Like, a usage-based model for law firms works a lot better because they consume things by case. And then they also go and they expense things with their clients by case as well. So by switching from something like 5K a month to a few $100s a case, suddenly our ACV went from something like 60K to like 150K. And so that kind of just fixed that problem. And also by telling them they can reimburse this cost, we suddenly went from like having a really long sales cycle where people are scared shitless to go interact with a new AI company to telling them it's essentially free. They can reimburse this against their client settlement. So then, we grew super fast. And now we're trying to solve a different problem where, like, I look at my sales reps and they're out there and they're trying to negotiate an annual contract where it's usage based and they're trying to maximize this ACV. And then they're like, hey, why don't you do like 100 cases a month? And the guy's like, nah, I just want to do 60 cases a month. And now I'm thinking, hey, is the product strong enough that we can embed it into companies and actually have a lower contract so we can grow into them, especially with so many different competitors coming in. So I wouldn't view this pricing model thing as a static thing. Just try and recognize where you're at, and can you like make a sale and then go from that into like whatever next business objective you guys are trying to get. So.
And one of the things, Jerry, that you realized, I think, pretty quickly too. I mean, everyone sort of makes arbitrary pricing at the beginning, a little bit, but it's like when you can sell in a way that they're used to buying, that creates so much less friction because it fits into their processes. And I was a former lawyer, and so yeah, when you could pass it on, so trying to sell software to a lawyer is a pretty hard thing because for so many reasons. But if you can pass it on to the client, they're used to buying that way. And so we have time for some questions. If anyone has any questions, raise your hand and Caroline can come by and get it. And Tyler, if you have any final questions. Okay.
Thank you. I've heard that hiring AI, ML, technical talent is really challenging for startups because you're competing with the Metas and Googles and OpenAIs of the world and their massive pay packages. How do you get around that challenge?
Well, Jerry, we were just talking about this before. I will start. Jerry is actively doing this right now, so he probably has some stories. The only way to get great talent is to get great talent who want the high risk, high reward of being at a startup. And that is not just true for AI. This has been true for software engineers for a really long time, especially like all of y'all are in Seattle, right? Like Seattle has amazing tech talent, and it is dominated historically by Microsoft and Amazon. Like there are a lot of lucrative jobs in this specific location for engineers that pay a lot of money. The kind of people who are mainly looking for stability and short-term paycheck are just not going to join your startup, and you actually don't want them at your startup, even if they're technically really strong. On the other hand, there are people who are ambitious, who want to grow their career, because even if your startups are all going to work for sure. But even if somehow, against all odds, they didn't, those people who take a bet on working for you are catapulting their own personal careers forward. They're going to have opportunities for leading big things, for bigger job titles, for faster promotions that will set them up for their 10-year arc in their career. And so I don't know that I believe exactly in competing with the Metas or the Microsofts or the Googles. I think you're going after a different kind of person, and that person has to be motivated by the awesome things that you offer, which are just not the same things. So if you go head for head, you're probably going after the wrong people. That's my take.
Yeah, this I think depends on stage, right? Like one of the things I'll talk about with tech talent, I think, is like, if you think about tech talent, it's a relatively defensive concept. Like if you don't know what you're building, you need someone really smart to come and build it for you. And the realistic part of this is like, if you're a technical founder and you're in a pre-seed or seed startup, like no tech talent's going to come bail you out. You're going to probably have to build all of this yourself, and these people can help you, and potentially they can grow. But you own it, right? As you get a little bit bigger, people can come in and you can use recruiters, you can find people. For AI, LLM talent, we found that it's a lot easier to train engineers to learn data science than data scientists to learn engineering, just in general. So the younger, the better. If they're strong at coding, the better, right? Generative AI is actually a level setter for coders in general, right? Like if you guys ever played with Cursor, that thing just like helps you write code like you're the strongest coder ever. So, there's a lot of things that potentially can help, but like I would think like even fixating on really strong talent on the early stage is probably harder. When you get to like what we're trying to do right now, it becomes a sales funnel. Like you're just putting a reverse sales funnel on recruiting, where basically we're trying to get every single person in. We look at really strong candidates. We're taking in from all sorts of places, from like tech recruiters to our internal referral systems. And then we're paying extra attention to high potential ones. We're trying to close them. You have to pitch them, right? It's just like any other sales process. We have to understand the market. We're a 5-day-a-week company. in office right now. And so part of the discussion, even with Malin today, was like, do we need to let go of some of that like culture in order to tap a larger talent base, right? It's a very market-based decision for us. So I'd say like there's no good answer here, but it's always going to be just hard work.
One of the other things that really helps is if you or one of your co-founders or some senior executive at the company is deeply technically credible. Like I have a PhD in natural language processing. I was a technical founder, right? My co-founder / spouse was also a technical founder. So we had early on the ability to tell our story to technologists in a way that made it so obvious why they were going to get to build really cool stuff. Because tech people joining your company, like yes, they want to see you grow. They want to see like revenue going up. But the thing they're most motivated by is like, what problem am I going to get to show up and solve? So it helps to have somebody senior in the organization who can tell that story in an inspiring way, again, to get the kind of people that you want. This way.
Hi, we sell to fitness and wellness companies, and we get this question a lot. And I'm sure from the legal perspective, I'm just curious what your answer is. How do you address the accuracy issue? It's like, if AI making a mistake in a health and wellness issue may not, for a store may not be a big deal, but for a legal issue, it's probably catastrophic. So how do you address that?
It's actually like an opportunity to differentiate, right? It's like as a technology founder, having something like a hallucination allows you to build features around a hallucination. It's like selling a car. It's like, how do you address the safety issue? Suddenly there's a market for airbags that now you're going to go and compete against. We have like a dozen side processes for every single prompt that's being run to understand everything from like citations to the cohesiveness of the answer to whether the answer makes sense across like multiple references, right? And we sell the shit out of that to like our lawyers by telling them that's what makes it better. We also have humans in the loop that detect handwriting, right? And our billing model addresses for that. So, for legal, like they care a lot about accuracy, and for certain data sets, like we specialize in those, right? So that's a lot of this, I think, is opportunity. It's not to solve the problem by building a better foundation model. It's to navigate the landscape and differentiate.
That's so well said. In general, every time you think you have a weak spot in your technical story, I think Jerry said, like, if you take one thing from this, is like find a way to turn it into a feature. Like one of the things at Textio we get asked and have been for years is like, how do you address bias? Like your product helps address bias and what people write. How do you address bias? Like, how do you make sure your models are bias free? And the answer is like, well, we don't. I totally have a bias, and my bias is to help people who didn't have opportunities in the past get them now. So if you share that bias, you're going to like our models because it's designed to create that biased outcome. If you don't, it won't. And so like a lot of it is knowing where your weak spots are and turning them into features and sales points. It's so interesting to turn hallucinations into features. It's so smart.
Hello. These were not your first software companies that you worked at. What is the biggest difference in running an AI native company in terms of how you run it differently, either in functions, speed, et cetera? Because when I meet with the startups I work with, I had one this morning, I basically just say, you need to go much fucking faster. And you can actually go much faster. And you need to drop the bias to some extent of the way things used to be done. But what's your perspective on that?
AI companies, I think the magic power of an AI company is you can build a really, really good demo really quickly. And that means that that should reflect in your sales. Like just undoubtedly, if you can't sell your demo, then you have no business building an AI company. So I would say that's the main difference. Because what happens when you build a shitty demo? You end up getting all these customers that are potentially unhappy. So now you're working really hard overnight to try to like make them happy. And then you're trying to get more sales in, right? There's so much chaos that you're inviting into your life. But there's also 50 other companies trying to do the same thing, building their own crappy demos, trying to land sales. That doesn't happen in like the traditional industry, right? You're addressing such an acute pain point with this demo. It's just magical. So like, I think like trying to go from a principles like perspective of let's go build this amazing product and let's go sell it. Before you know it, you won't have a market left.
Yeah, so Textio wasn't the first software company I worked for, but it was the first startup I worked for. It's the first one I founded. And I think that's true for you too, right? So we were both first-time startuppers in the companies we founded as CEOs. Part of why I left big tech is because I was frustrated at how slowly things moved, and I wanted the work. I mean, I was an executive at Microsoft, and still literally nothing I did would have ever changed the stock price, like ever. And so I wanted to create something where I felt like I had impact. And to your question about talent, that's why I think you want those people who like want to have impact. And the only thing I've ever seen work, AI native or not, to get speed is to hold people accountable to speed. And that means firing people, sorry to say, who don't hit the speed. And it means absolutely celebrating the people who do. And I don't think I was as confident. Like early on in our Textio journey, Jensen and I were constantly frustrated. Not right away early, because the early people were fast. But like that next wave of hiring, we were frustrated that people didn't go as fast as we wanted them to do. And like I think our learning over a 6-month period is like, oh, those people are never going to convert. Like they want a different kind of company than the company we're building. And we would be all better served to like be really clear-eyed about that and be like, this just isn't for you. Like, and so measuring and rewarding speed and doing the work to hold people accountable is the only thing I've seen work.
And I think my answer is a little quip. So like just going into the actual software process, I think one of the biggest traps in AI companies is solving a really hard problem that a foundation model can't address. And like the engineer or the company thinks they can. Because at a blink of an eye, you're 3 months in and it's not working, right? And ultimately, does the customer care? They don't. So like it's really the trick to me is actually around product management. It's like you have to get a really good feel for what the technology can do. And if an approach doesn't work, you have to be fluid enough to retool that. So like having something like citations versus hallucinations is a great example of us understanding the gap in the product and retooling. It's so much easier to write a citations feature than reduce the hallucinations of a foundation model.
Yeah, and reward people who take risks and go fast, even if it doesn't work out, I think is key. Like, what are you holding people accountable for? We had an engineer he was probably like employee number 20 at the company. He's still at the company. And he joined, and another engineer who had been in our first 3 employees was really struggling with a technical problem. And he had like the sunk cost fallacy where he was like deep into it and it wasn't working, but he didn't want to give up the approach. And the new person came in and like 48 hours after, he's like, hey, I don't want to overstep, but I was just playing with something and I wonder if this would work. And to that early engineer's credit, who was senior to the new guy, he looked at it and he was like, shit, well, this is what we're going to do. And he was willing to like let it go. And like those were both great employees because the first guy was willing to come in and shake things up. And the second guy was willing to recognize it and not put his ego in front of it. Like that's the stuff that helps you go fast.
Yeah, I think AI software is the type of world where you can build software for 6 months and not have it work, and someone else comes up with a solution in 5 minutes and it works better.
Thank you. I interviewed Tyler a little while ago, and we were actually talking about Jerry, and he mentioned that you challenge and love your customers, which I think was like a big takeaway from that talk. And I guess I'm curious, like for founders going into verticals that they don't have like deep domain experience in, bringing like a technical mindset to challenge and love your customers to actually get to the finish line and get that customer. Like, what advice would you give? How did you think about that? And I guess this goes for Kieran as well too.
When I was in high school, I had this like physics test, and like I really needed to like pass it, and I didn't know all the answers, so I programmed this like TI-89 calculator note-taking thing. And then someone told me that the teachers would come and look at everyone's calculator, so then I made like a little password thing for that as well. And then I gave it to all my classmates, and then they loved it. And at that moment, I learned that I could delight people with code. And so then when I was starting to struggle with my customer set, because I just didn't really understand how to engage them, I thought back to my TI-89 programming physics roots of delighting people with code, because that's what I bring to the table, right? It's like my team has the ability to stand up a magical experience overnight. And by doing that, you can build a relationship with them, being your authentic self with your skill set, willing to learn their market. And I think that applies to any skill set for any founder. Most people come from a really specific skill set, right? So like, how do you engage with them using that magic power of yours, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think I mercifully have never worked in HR. I have so much empathy for people who do, especially having built Textio. I was publishing a lot of stuff in mainstream media about bias at work. So I was making friends among HR leaders. So I knew a lot of the potential buyers and I was building empathy for them, even though I hadn't had their job. One of the things I really had empathy for is they were totally underserved, like totally underserved. Like they never got the cool technology. They're a cost center. No one likes the HR person. No one's happy when they show up. Like I had so much empathy for, and they have had and mostly have horrible tool stacks. Like there's a joke in HR that the way tools integrate is like swivel chair integration, meaning you like turn from one screen, use this tool, then you swivel over to this screen and use that tool because the tools are so bad. And so I know I worked in R&D, so I was a very well-served part of my enterprise. I had a lot of empathy for what could, for them and what could be created and putting the empathy at the center. And by the way, have found their low expectations very frustrating at times because the tools they're willing to accept are terrible. And I'm like, you should fire that customer. I know they're not even competitive with, or that vendor, like we're not even competitive with them, but like, why are you doing this? Or even when our customers would come to us with like, I love Textio, let me show you my workflow. And I would be like, oh, like, this is horrible, you should fire us. Like having empathy for that and seeing where they could be, even if they don't have the experience to see where they could be, is a motivating vision, I think.
I think most like traditional industries people are trying to disrupt have done the same stuff for like decades, right? And so if you think about what you're trying to do for these people, you're trying to just make their life a little bit more enjoyable, show them something new. Where I think first adopters come, so like from, for example, for lawyers, we meet a lot of lawyers at law firms or at conferences. Think about the type of person that goes to a conference. They're a first adopter, they care a lot about their craft. They're just looking for something new in an educated perspective to go do that. It doesn't even have to be better. It just has to be new with a new thought process. I think about like, I remember when like that MacBook Touch Bar came out, I wanted that thing so bad. It was such a piece of shit. Like the keyboard, the butterfly keyboard with like that 13mm thing, I wanted that. I didn't know why, but I wanted it. Did it have to work? Not really. If you're a product company, like you could just produce another one, right? It's that they're buying that depth of thought that you're thinking about their field in a new way. And I think that creates an authenticity that allows you to build a relationship.
Okay, I think we are out of time for this portion of the program. Jerry, thank you. Kieran, thank you. Tyler, thank you.
Thank you.
And also thank you to our sponsors, Fenwick, if you're out in the audience. I think if you have any other questions, feel free to mingle and all that, but look forward to meeting you all. Thank you for being here.